Great. Well, I think we'll get started now. So good morning, everyone. And on behalf of the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in the UK, we would like to give you a very warm welcome to this morning's Connecting to Spain virtual panel discussion, which we've organised in collaboration with the Spanish Consulate in Edinburgh. I'm just going to now hand over to Eduardo Barachina, who is the president of the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in the UK, to give some opening remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. Thank you, Hannah, and in particular, thank you and good morning, José Luis and Hazel, for joining us today. We at the Chamber of Commerce are delighted to be doing this webinar with the Spanish General Consulate in Edinburgh. It's been more than a year in which we've been working on these seminars because we think we are determined to bring together more Spanish companies and Scottish institutions. And we do think it's imperative that we, the Chamber of Commerce, which represents the Spanish investments in the UK, play that role. We live in a world which is now dominated by a gigantic multilateral strategy. And I mean the 2030 agenda approved by the General Assembly of the UN, which as a result of this has produced the 10-point green industrial revolution in the United Kingdom, as well as the European Green Deal. So essentially, every large economy or government is now trying to reshape economies and different market players into sustainable finance, environmental as well as social governance objectives. So I mean, of course, ESG. The ESG principles, objectives, are going to reshape in the next 10 years, 40 years, how we do finance, how we finance these type of projects that have an impact on society, and how we use energy towards what type of energy are we moving. If, as is the case in the European Union, we want to achieve in 2050 zero coal emissions. Every single participant in the market, be public or be private, will definitely have a role to play. The European Union, for example, has been extremely active, approving a number of taxonomy regulations, which ensure we don't end up on greenwashing and we just simply label every product or every deal as ESG. I also know that, following Brexit, the British government is also very keen to have its own green taxonomy, and also the Chancellor Rishi Sunak has announced the first sovereign green deal in the United Kingdom this year. So I'm actually, with all this ahead and all this precedent, I'm delighted we have José Luis Muñoz from Repsol Sinopec Resources UK, and Hazel, Gulliver, Director of Engagement with ScottishPower and part of Iberdrola. I think that to discuss energy and more importantly, the new model, what's in the horizon when it comes to energy, if we want to comply with ESG principles and objectives, I think we could not have two better speakers. And I'm very grateful, Hazel, José Luis, that you will be able to share your thoughts and ideas. The plan, as usual, is that there will be a Q&A session later. And as ever, that we organize these events, we do want these webinars to create connections, and I'm hoping that both the Spanish Chamber of Commerce and the Consulate can always help and put people together. People who said, "Oh, I thought José Luis or Hazel were great, and I just want to follow up with them on one question." I think if we manage to ensure that these webinars do not end up here, it will be a tremendous success. So without further ado, I think I now hand over to our host, which I believe is our dear friend Ignacio Cartagena in Edinburgh, in General Counsel, Spanish General Counsel in Edinburgh. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. We are having some technical trouble, which I believe that has been somehow resolved by now. Thank you, welcome. I think you explained almost everything that I wanted to explain. So I think that you spared a lot of my time, which is good for the presentation. The only thing I just wanted to add to your explanations is a little bit, the rationale for this cycle. We started with it back at the beginning of last year when we had to jump and to go online because of the COVID situation. And we started detecting sectors in which we could help or contribute to further interaction between Spanish and Scottish private actors in different fields. We believe that there is a number of niche, a number of sectors in which there is further room for doing things together, for learning from each other. One of those sectors is tourism, sustainable tourism. Another one is infrastructure. Another sector is food industry. And another sector is, of course, renewable energies. To all of those sectors, we have been dedicating sessions like the current one on renewable energies. And of course, the idea is going on and on because there is a lot of things to do. And because, within the competencies of both a general consulate and the Chamber of Commerce in London, there is the promotion of relations among private actors, among civil society. And this is our big challenge. Why renewable energies? Well, I think it's quite clear. Both Spain and the UK have a clear commitment to the energy transition. In Spain, for example, renewable energies generated 43% of total power resources in last year, following figures of Red Eléctrica Española. It is the highest figure, the highest proportion in renewables since the record started back in 2007. Renewables represent an installed generation capacity of around 53% in my country. And wind energy represents 29% of the total data of February this year. Spain is the fourth country in Europe in terms of installed wind power. What about the UK? Well, the UK leads the world in offshore wind energy production. Renewables represent more than 40% of energy production. And there are absolutely amazing projects concerning wind energy and tide energy in the UK, in the North Sea, and in particular in Scotland. We have all talked about, heard about, for example, speaking about the Dogger Bank wind farm, which will be the biggest wind farm in the world once it will be finished. So there is a clear commitment from both sides to renewable energies. There is always also the perception that the energy transition is a global endeavor, is a global objective in which every actor will have to be on board if we want to succeed. But it also has to deliver some benefits, some profits for the local communities. And this is an absolutely crucial aspect in order to have a successful energy transition, regardless of the fact that we are talking about, a global challenge. If we don't manage to transmit, to communicate, that is also beneficial for local communities, probably we will not succeed in facing this challenge, or if we do succeed, it might be a little bit too late. Of all those things, we will be speaking with two experts, with José Luis Muñoz and with Hazel Gulliver. I thank both of them for their presence today. José Luis Muñoz is representing Repsol Sinopec, who is an oil and gas exploration and production company operating in the North Sea. Now, I think I will be very, very shortly going through his CV before passing him the floor. José Luis assumed the position of CEO of Repsol Sinopec Resources UK in April 2020. He originally joined Repsol in 2005 and has most recently served as managing director of Repsol's UK business units. Prior to this, he had responsibility for corporate development from 2010 to 2015. In this position, he was instrumental in the acquisition of the global operations of the former Talisman Energy business, subsequently as integration and transformation manager. He also delivered a wide range of successful M&A projects in both upstream and downstream sectors across Repsol's portfolio, ranging from Europe to both North and South America. In November 2020, José Luis was appointed a member of the Board of Oil and Gas UK. José Luis holds academic qualifications from the Universities of León, with Bachelor of Business Administration, and Limerick, Bachelor of Marketing. He also studied at the prestigious IESE in Spain, doing a master's in oil and gas, and also he made part of his studies in the Instituto de Empresa. So, José Luis, thank you again for your presence today with us, and you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Ignacio, for the introduction. I think that no need from my side to add anything else. So let's go straight just to the materials. So I'm going to first share my screen. Hopefully it's going to work. Okay. Okay, Ignacio, can you confirm it, please?
Yes, it's okay. I think we can all see it perfectly. Yes.
Okay, good. No, thank you very much. This morning, I would like to share with you some perspective about the energy transition. First thing, I will touch on the effort that UK is making on this regard, also the contribution and the effort that we are doing as an oil and gas industry in UK to support this energy transition. And finally, I will recap on the challenge, on the massive challenge that this is going to represent, and not only the challenge, but also I think that is going to be an opportunity, not only for our sector, for the oil and gas industry, but also for other sectors and other industries across the UK, and eventually also for Spanish companies that would be interested in this energy transition challenge. So I will be structuring the presentation in three main sections. So the first one, as I mentioned, just a bit of context about the UK, where the country is in terms of this energy transition commitment. It is clear that there is a position to take the leadership at a global level in UK. Second one, as I mentioned, our commitment as an industry also with this net zero roadmap. And finally, a North Sea transition deal, which has been an agreement between the industry and the UK government, which was announced a couple of months ago, and is going to be quite pivotal just to reach both targets. So first thing at a country level, but also as an industry level. This is going to be, as I mentioned, a massive challenge, but it's going to bring a number of opportunities. Going first, and just to give you the context I mentioned, so what you can see in your screens on the left-hand side has been the journey so far that the UK has run. So in the last 30 years, the country has been able to reduce the carbon footprint and emissions by 50%. It's a quite remarkable achievement. Has been a question of 30 years. Now the country is in a position that is having an emissions like 400 50 million tons every year. So this quite important reduction has been mainly achieved through a main driver, which has been the switch from coal to gas-fired power stations. So this has been the main driver, and I would say that any country, any industrialized country committed with the energy transition, I think that is the first step. It is something that happened back in the 90s in Europe, and now, for instance, is happening in China. So it's the first quick win. And looking forward, and you know, since 2019, so the country has committed UK to be a carbon neutral economy in 2050. So what I would say, and another key message on this slide, is that this country, I think that has been a good example and probably one of the most successful stories on how to make compatible two key challenges. So the first one, the reduction of the emissions, but also to be able at the same time to generate an economic growth. In this period, so the UK has been able to generate an economic growth of like 75%. So the message is that both ways have been fully compatible. Just to give you a reference and to offer a reference on where we are right now. So transport, heating and industrial use now accounts of 2/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions in UK. So you see the proportion from the different sectors. So the underlying message here is that to get and to reach this net zero target in 2050 is going to be a transformational approach. It's not going to be a kind of sector effort. It's going to be about the industry as a whole. It's going to imply the government, it's going to imply businesses, industries, and even individuals. It's going to imply a change in habits and also behaviors. So as I mentioned before, in the previous journey since 90s to the current situation, I think that this shift from the coal to gas has explained a quite significant tranche of the total reduction. But what we have ahead to reach the net zero economy is going to imply basically the whole economy. Just moving on to my sector, onto my industry, which is about the oil and gas. First thing I would like to highlight, so the relevant role that this industry is still playing in UK. So nowadays, in terms of the primary energy needs, is still supporting 75% oil and gas of the total primary energy needs. Talking about the local production, so this oil and gas which is being produced in the North Sea, we are talking about 45% of the total primary energy demand is coming from the North Sea nowadays. Another important message in terms of the economic impact, the positive economic impact of this industry. Nowadays, this industry is supporting like 270,000 jobs, mainly in Scotland. And the third key figure that I would highlight here, it's about the taxes paid. Since the first oil was produced in this basin back in the 70s, in the early 70s, so this industry has been able to contribute with like 350 billion pounds of taxes paid, has been the main contributor in the last 50 years to the UK economy in terms of the taxes paid. So I think that has been a quite essential industry for the country, is nowadays an essential industry in the country, and hopefully is going to be the case in the years to come. Of course, now with the commitment with the net zero. In terms of the emissions, so the sector that I mentioned before nowadays is contributing or is representing 4% of the total greenhouse gas emissions in the country. So we are talking about 18 million tons every year. 80% are specifically coming from the production of oil and gas offshore installations. And as I mentioned before, so since last year, there is a commitment in place for the whole industry, for all the operators in the North Sea to achieve the net zero target by 2050, following the commitment achieved or the commitment granted by the country last year. We have another milestone, not that far, which is going to be on the 23rd, at least to be able to reach a reduction of 50% of our emissions compared to 2018. Next slide, and here is a summary on what we have been doing so far. Only 3 messages here. So the first one, in the last 2 years, the industry has been able to generate reductions in terms of emissions of 10%. so a reduction at the same time since 2013, so the carbon intensity by 15%. But the most difficult part is still to come. So with this first milestone in 2030 with a reduction of 50%, this is going to be achieved through a combination of operational improvements, but at the same time for the industry to be part of energy transition projects. So far, the industry has been part of 30 relevant energy transition initiatives, mainly talking about carbon projects, carbon capture projects, but also hydrogen projects that at this stage are mainly pilots. And these two elements, so both the carbon capture projects, but also the hydrogen production, so will be an essential part of the transformation that this industry is going to have in the couple of decades to come. Going into the details of this North Sea transition deal, maybe some of you have been hearing about that. So has been a deal which was announced 2-3 months ago between the industry, the oil and gas industry, and the UK. So this has been an agreement that has been working for quite a while. We are talking about more than a year, and it's basically trying to give a response to the fundamental question that you can see at the top of the slide. How to make compatible the continuity of the positive impact of the oil and gas in the UK economy, but with a path to the net zero. It means to reach a point in which our industry is not going to represent any kind of carbon footprint. And this North Sea transition, this agreement reached between the industry and the UK is trying to give this response. It's going to imply at least three things. The first one, making sure that the oil and gas industry is going to be committed with this emission reduction. Second one is going to be a joint work, because this is going to require us to overcome a number of commercial and regulatory barriers. And the final thing is going to imply the repurpose and reuse of some of our infrastructure to be used on projects connected with the energy transition, renewable energies, carbon capture, and hydrogen, as I mentioned before. So which are the key pillars of this North Sea transition deal? Which are going to be the implication? What is going to be the commitment from the industry, and which is going to be the commitment from the government? Four main pillars, the ones that you can see in this slide. So the first one is about the decarbonization of the industry with the targets I mentioned before. So trying to reach the reduction of 50% in 2030 and to be neutral in 2050. The key lever to get this reduction is going to be about the electrification of the whole sector. Nowadays, the power that is consumed at the sites in the North Sea, it's basically coming from gas and diesel. So the game changer and the step change here would be about to have a full electrified sites. It's not going to be easy. It's going to imply a quite sizable investment, 2 to 3 billion pounds, and also has a technological challenge since most of these facilities were built back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Second one is about the carbon capture and storage. In this regard, I think that there is a commitment from UK to become a world leader. So the target is by 2030 to have a capacity of 10 million tons per annum of carbon capture. And this is going to require another sizable investment program of something between 2 to 3 billion. And this is going to imply also the commitment from the government to create a new regulatory framework to support all of this investment and all of these activities. Next one is about hydrogen. For me right now is going to be the most challenging piece. The target is to deliver 5 gigawatts of low carbon hydrogen production capacity by 2030. So not an easy challenge to deal with. So we are, or the starting point, I would say it is just a pilot project, and this needs to be developed in the next 10 years. And also the challenge is that a local market in terms of hydrogen needs to be developed. So for me, it's going to be the key challenge. And the final one, that is going to be a catalyst for the other three pillars, is the adaptation of the local ecosystem, talking about supply chain and also the people to this new energy transition. In total, this program, in terms of investment, is going to be massive. We are talking about something between 14 to 16 billion to be deployed in the next 10 years on this basin. And also, the target is that at least 50% is going to be deployed through the local content. So which means for any company that is interested in being part of this challenge, because it's not going to be only about the oil and gas, it's going to be about the energy sector, it's going to be about technologies, other kind of services, even it's going to be about finance. For any company that is interested to be part of this challenge, of this opportunity, it's quite important to consider partnership, consortiums of these opportunities to join, I would say, the local content. No? And finally, and just for me to close this presentation, I want to try to make it visual, no? Just for you to visualize the kind of transformation that we are talking about here. So first thing you can see on the left-hand side, so which is the current layout of the industry, you see the different sites at the North Sea, and you see also some of the new renewables projects. Now we are talking about isolated realities, different streams that try supplying with energy, so the local markets at the onshore. So the first step is about the 2035, where the key word is try to start achieving some kind of integration. And you see how a number of renewables projects are going to source, are going to supply renewable energy to the sites. And at the same time, some of the carbon infrastructure in the industry is going to be reused, for instance, for carbon capture projects. So we are going to evolve to a more integrated reality. And the target model, that is what you can see now in this final slide, is the vision, is the ambition to evolve to a fully integrated energy system in which from the offshore you are able to get the energy, so it would be about oil and gas, but also hydrogen, and all of these facilities to be supported by renewables project. And at the end of the day is to deliver a fully integrated stream of net zero carbon energy to the local markets, to the onshore market. So the key word in here is about net zero, but also integrated, fully integrated energy hubs. This is the concept and the vision for the 2050, and this is going to imply what I mentioned before in terms of the investment and in terms of challenges. And just for me to recap very quickly, so first thing, the commitment from the UK is very clear. So in terms of the net zero, also the oil and gas sector is committed to support this target. So the North Sea Transition Deal, this partnership between the government and the industry, is going to be pivotal to achieve both targets from the country level, but also from an industry level. So the key pillars is going to be decarbonization, carbon capture, hydrogen, and the supply chain transformation. And it's going to imply the reuse and repurpose of a significant part of our current infrastructure. Significant progress has been made so far, but the most relevant challenge is still to come with this final vision or ambition to evolve or to transition towards a fully integrated energy system with no carbon footprint. Okay, thank you very much. So, hand over to you, Hazel.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much, José Luis. You have been very, very clear on describing the UK's bid for renewables. I'm particularly grateful for your explanations on the North Sea Energy Transition Deal, which in my view is a key deal for the development of the city where you are residing now, but also the whole region, Aberdeen and all that region. For explaining to us a little bit this integrated energy vision for 2050. Now I should pass the floor to Hazel Gulliver. And Hazel is Director of Engagement with ScottishPower. She's part of the ScottishPower is part of the Iberdrola Group. Her role sees her liaising with a variety of stakeholders on all issues of interest to the company, with a particular focus on how we can achieve a green recovery from the COVID crisis, and on ScottishPower's role as a principal partner for COP26, taking place, in fact, in its home city of Glasgow later this year. Hazel graduated in law with honors in European law from the University of Glasgow. During her career, she has spent 10 years working in Brussels, first in the European Commission, then as a consultant, and then after a few years back in the UK, she returned to spend a few years in Iberdrola's Brussels office. Before joining ScottishPower, Hazel spent a number of years working for the Scotch whisky industry, and then with the energy regulator Ofgem. I have the pleasure to tell you that this consulate is preparing some very promising side events for the COP26, in cooperation with ScottishPower, and taking advantage of the fact that ScottishPower has fantastic premises in Glasgow. So I think that's a common project, and take the opportunity to really thank Hazel for her collaboration on these projects. Hazel, without further ado, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ignacio, and thank you, José Luis, and thank you too for inviting me to join you today. It's a real pleasure to be able to talk to you about this extremely interesting subject. So I'll try not to repeat some of the things that José Luis was saying. What I want to do is I'll just give you a little bit of an introduction to Iberdrola and ScottishPower as part of the Iberdrola Group. I'll talk a little bit about the UK government ambition in this area, some of the challenges we face, and then, as Ignacio said, as ScottishPower is a principal partner of COP26, so I'll just take the opportunity to say a few words about that. So first of all, just for those of you who don't know, Iberdrola is one of the 3 largest utility companies in the world. As you can see from the maps there, we have renewables, networks, and generation and retail businesses throughout the world, as well as in Spain and the UK. There is a large renewables presence from the USA to Japan, and networks again from USA, Brazil, and generation and retail across the world again, Mexico, and across the European Union as well. So just to give you an idea of the real global perspective that Iberdrola brings to this debate. And as part of Iberdrola, ScottishPower, as you can see from the map there, is represented pretty much across the whole UK and also in Ireland. Again, we have renewable generation, networks, and retail business. The sort of networks business in the south of Scotland and the northwest of England and Wales, you can see from the dark green areas on the map. Onshore wind throughout the country, and offshore winds again on both sides of the countries. It's probably worth mentioning one of the most important parts of this, and when we're talking about energy transition, ScottishPower generates only renewable electricity, and we've made that transition over the course of the last 25 years. It's been an Iberdrola strategic decision to move towards renewable energy generation. So we really are at the forefront of the energy transition, having closed our last coal plant in the UK in 2016, and then from the beginning of 2019, generating only renewable electricity. So we're well on the way during that transition. I mean, some of the things we might want to talk about a bit later on is how we've done that. Concepts such as the just transition, which is really important in Scottish and UK terms and throughout the world, and as part of the COP agenda. So the perspective, I suppose, we're bringing to this is that the energy transition is possible. It's not easy, and I know a lot of people will say that decarbonising the electricity sector is the easy bit, but I'm pretty sure nobody said that 10 years ago. And then look where we are now. So UK government ambition. First of all, I should say that from a ScottishPower perspective, we're extremely pleased about and welcome and support the UK government's ambition. We saw a 10-point plan last year, followed by an energy white paper, and that's going to be followed up by a strategy paper and policy statement. And quite frankly, the fact that the UK has been the first country to legislate for net zero really demonstrates the leadership that we're really fortunate to have in this area. And I think it's one of the areas that I think on all levels of the political spectrum, people are aligned as to what we need to achieve. And we saw recently the UK government's real commitment to target setting, which saw a target being set of 78% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2035, which is really quite exceptional. And it's a challenge, but we'll come on to that later, that it's a challenge that we simply have to meet. And it's some of these ambitious policies are reasons why companies like Iberdrola invest in the UK. And I think it works for both sides. It works for the UK as much as it works for us, because the benefits that can be brought from companies with global experience that I demonstrated on the first slide, as well as the scale and the levels of best practice and innovation that we've gone through ourselves, can be beneficial in the UK. We have a huge track record, as I said, 20 years, more than 20 years, driving down the costs of green technology. No one would believe the cost reductions we've seen in relation to renewables that have come about as a result of the policy mechanisms that the UK government has introduced. For example, things like the renewables option obligation and the contracts for difference scheme have really done a lot to bring down the costs. So in the context of these ambitions, I thought it might be worth just mentioning a few areas that we're particularly close to in terms of how we deliver them, where obviously we see ourselves as a key player with generation and network and retail interests throughout the UK. We have a key role to play in helping deliver on some of these targets. And one of the important things that we've realised is there really is no one-size-fits-all approach to resolving the net zero challenge. And so towards the end of 2019, we set up a project within ScottishPower to look at the different needs in different communities. So whether those communities are rural or urban and densely populated, there's a need for different measures to be taken in order to deliver the electric vehicle infrastructure or the decarbonised heat or whatever it happens to be in those areas. So what we did through this Zero Carbon Communities project was look at those different areas and analyse just exactly what they needed and what the particular communities need in order to help meet the net zero targets. Because it's all very well having an overall global target, but the fact that there is no clear demonstration of how we're going to meet that target, but this really needs to be sort of broken down into a bit more detail. So that was one of the projects we worked on. And I mentioned, sorry, I should say that's very much ongoing, obviously, at the moment. So, and I mentioned the UK government's 10-point plan. This was quite nice for us to see the UK government having a 10-point plan. This is not the UK government's 10-point plan. This is ScottishPower's 10-point plan for unlocking net zero, which we published in July last year, quite a few months ahead of the UK government. But what we sought to do as the sort of COVID crisis hit, and at a point where we thought, okay, there's an emergency here, the COVID emergency as well as the climate emergency. What can we do to address both of these? And how can we do it with minimum additional cost? So I won't go through this in detail. I'm happy to discuss it if anyone is interested, and you can find information about this on our website. But the things that we are talking about promoting were exactly the kind of things that the UK government is also looking to promote through their own 10-point plan. We're talking about auctions for future offshore wind. One thing that's really important to us is ensuring the planning process is as efficient as it can be. We need to make sure their frameworks are there to encourage investment in net zero, and things like bringing forward the phase out dates for petrol and diesel cars, and looking at charging infrastructure. There's a number of different things there's a number of different things that we can do now in order to move things forward and start to address this emergency that we're facing. So that's really just what this slide represents. I know there's a lot of information on there, but overall, the message there is there are things we can do, but we just need to start doing them because we have to meet these targets. And the longer we wait, the less likely that's going to become. So also, as I said, the UK government have their own 10-point plan, fully aligned with everything we're saying. So quadrupling offshore wind capacity to 40 gigawatts and introducing targets for green hydrogen, new technology is really important. And also looking at green public transport, all of the things there. But just one thing to say, and I'll come on to that a wee bit more in a minute, is the importance of having the network infrastructure in place in order to handle all of this change and all this increased capacity and all this increased demand. Which leads me nicely to what we need to do. Basically, so the regulatory system that we have at the moment has been in place for a long time, and ultimately the interests of Ofgem, I used to work for Ofgem, so I'm very well aware that the Ofgem priorities are in relation to the consumer and ensuring the cost to consumers are kept as low as possible, protecting the consumer ultimately, which is as it should be. But I think there is an argument now that as we're moving to consider the need to meet net zero and the climate emergency demands, we need to be sure that the framework that Ofgem is operating under can meet those challenges. So I mean, just the statistic there, it sounds very high level, but driving 3 times more electricity consumption as households decarbonise their cars and heating. That's quite a lot. And we need to make sure the framework allows the network companies to invest in order to provide the infrastructure to support that. And we do think that Ofgem has a really important role to play here. We know this, we know the demand is coming, we know the investment needs to be made, so we really just need to be getting on with it. And so it's not all about Ofgem, it's also about planning and ensuring that the planning process that we have in place allows the development of for example, whether it's a renewables onshore wind development, or whether it's new technologies such as solar batteries and green hydrogen, as we discussed, or as we're doing at ScottishPower, we're looking at developing hybrid sites, combining all of these things to make the best use of the assets available. But the problem is we need to make sure those processes are quicker, more efficient, and can happen in parallel. And it's not a sequential process, which is one after the other. It's everything happening at once. And again, as I said a minute ago, it needs to start now. Can we do it? Well, can we do it? We have to do it. So it's a bit of a rhetorical question, really. As I said, 10 years ago, nobody would have said we would be where we are now with renewable generation. And the reason we are where we are is due to decisive policy frameworks which have been put in place by the government. So reflecting on the subject for the presentation today, we're talking about challenges for energy companies. The challenges are there, but the government also has the authority and the power to deliver on providing the appropriate policy frameworks to encourage the innovation and investment that'll deliver not only the networks infrastructure that we need, but also the volume of renewables generation that we need to deliver on the net zero targets. So I've just concluded there with investment, innovation, and leadership. We can do it. I'd like to be optimistic. We can do it, but like I said, we just need to get going. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hazel, for your presentation and for describing all the efforts made by ScottishPower, which we have seen that run in parallel to some extent to the efforts, nationwide efforts of the UK government, and even sometimes anticipate those efforts and those plans. And you also underlined that many things have to be in place for the energy transition actually to meet the goals. In particular, you spoke about the regulatory system, which has to be updated, and also, the infrastructure, the grid, and the interconnections, which represent, I believe, a huge challenge, both for the industry and also for the authorities. Well, thank you very much again to both of you for your presentations. And now I pass the floor to Hannah for the question and answer session.
Yeah, thank you very much again also from my side as well. In case anyone who tuned in doesn't know, I'm from the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in the UK. So yeah, we've been receiving some questions in response to both of your presentations, some to each one of you individually and some for both of you if you have anything you'd like to share. So one that we've got here, for example, is someone's asked about supplying electricity to oil rigs by electricity generation supplied. It was on the topic of supply electricity to oil rigs by own electricity generation supply developments, and someone has asked, is Repsol taking a strategic step into offshore wind farms?
Yes, very briefly. So two different things. First thing, yes, I think the answer to the first question. So there would be two different ways to electrify the rigs, the sites, the platform. One would be just through a connection with the onshore current generation capacity. This would be an alternative. Another one would be with the offshore capacity. I think that would be two ways. The most straightforward one would be with a connection with the onshore, but the idea in a second wave is also to have access to the power which is going to be generated even offshore. This is going to happen, but first probably is going to be a connection with the onshore. Regarding specifically Repsol and our strategic roadmap, so wind energy definitely now is part of our strategy, of our ambition. We have a number of projects mainly in Spain. Talking about specifically offshore, we have a couple of exciting pilot projects in Portugal. Nothing so far at a commercial level, but the intention, if in the years to come, start also deploying projects and concepts also at the offshore level. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you very much, José Luis. Okay, a question for ScottishPower. So Hazel. Someone has asked, is ScottishPower considering the use of SMR in the future as technology in its generation portfolio?
Well, first of all, someone will need to tell me what SMR is.
Yeah, I'm not. The truth is, I was hoping you would know what it meant.
Sorry, I'm a simple lawyer. I'm not a technical expert.
Oh, okay. Okay, don't worry then. Well, okay, hang on. Sorry.
If the person wants to mention what it is, then maybe I can answer.
Small manufactured reactors.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So that would be the answer to that one.
Okay. All right, no worries. Thank you. Okay, well, another question for you anyway, Hazel. Someone has asked about, with regards to wind power, what's your view on a possible trend in wind energy generation? So, for example, on large-scale deployments versus small-scale prosumer deployments. So someone said currently almost 100% is large-scale, yet other countries are experimenting with small-scale deployments. What's your view on this?
I think there's room for everyone here. I mean, if we need to quadruple the amount of energy we produce from renewables, then we need as many large and small developments as we can. But I think the point is about the large-scale developments are absolutely essential in order to facilitate not only the delivery of the renewable generation, but if we're talking about a green industrial revolution, the jobs that come with that, and the mobilizing a sustainable supply chain and local content, as José Luis referred to in his presentation as well, these large-scale developments are absolutely essential. And I think what we need is, in that sense, is a consistent series of auctions for offshore wind, for example, that will continue to deliver those large-scale developments. And we need more, quite frankly, and more space made available to that, or we're going to find it challenging to reach these targets. But yeah, there's room for everyone, I think, is the answer.
Perfect. José Luis, did you have anything you'd like to add to that, or about on the topic of wind power?
Talking about the wind farm, and in general, I think that the scale matters. The scale matters, and basically we want to move forward to the net zero, and this is going to imply, and this is going to impact all the sectors, specifically talking about the oil and gas. I think that the scale is going to be important. I see more space for the large scale development, at least if we are talking about the offshore and this kind of opportunities that needs to power, for instance, our industry. I think that the scale is important. I think that there will be a preference for these large scale projects, is my view. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Got another question here, which is quite specific. Wonder if either of you will know the answer to it. It's on the topic of wind power and battery storage. Someone has asked, how much, in your view, how much is the battery capacity? How much battery capacity will be needed by either 2030 or 2050 to store surplus capacity? And in what way would small-scale batteries, EV and smart home and small grid play a role in this?
Maybe I can have a go at that, but I'm not sure if I can put a number on it just out of thin air like that. But I think the role of batteries is absolutely crucial, and it's something that we're doing. For example, in our onshore wind farm at Whiteley, just outside Glasgow, we're installing a large battery there in order to sort of balance the intermittency that you find in wind, and that's something that we're looking to do where possible or where appropriate at all of our wind farm sites. So the roles of battery is absolutely crucial. And then yes, again, kind of similar to the previous question about small scale versus large scale, absolutely, why not, in relation to EVs or whichever small scale storage is also supporting the grid. Absolutely.
Yeah, on my side, just to add, I would say that yes, again, we are going to need also batteries at a certain scale. For instance, for the project I mentioned, and talking about hydrogen, or talking about our ability just to get access to this electrification at the site. So for me, you need a kind of backup just to deal with the reliability and the availability challenge that we have with some of the renewable energies. So the solution and the response is going to be the development at a certain scale, also with the capacity to store energy and basically to have a kind of backup. So we are looking, for instance, green hydrogen production and capacity in one of our terminals, and we are looking for alternatives to try to get storage capacity also, just to deal with the availability of the generation coming from the wind farms. No, but definitely, so it is going to be essential just to deliver a true net zero journey. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Great. Still got some more questions. Just as a reminder, everyone, if you have a question, you can either use the chat function or the Q&A function. They should both appear on the panel at the bottom of your screen, so whichever way you prefer. Another question that someone's asked to you, José Luis, is on the topic of COP26. He says, what are, in your mind, the biggest decisions to be taken and/or questions to be answered at COP26 to accelerate or ensure this transition?
Okay, I will give you my view, my perspective, but for sure that Hazel would have something to add. You know? But in my view, I think that probably I would highlight three things. So the first one, it is going to be the question about what we have to do in terms of the cultural change. As I mentioned, is not only going to be about the industrial sector, is not only going to be about the governments, but I think that it's going to be need a kind of cultural change and a swift and a significant change on the consumptions habits and behaviors. And I think that there is something that we need to deal with. The second one, I would highlight that it's the first time in the history that finally from, I would say, UK, States and Europe, there is willingness to start deploying a massive investment program that we are calling as this Green New Deal. So, but I think that we need a kind of coordination and consistency on what is going to happen in UK, what is going to happen in US, and what is going to happen in Europe. So for me, the key question is how these investment programs are going to be properly coordinated at international level, because finally the willingness, the money will be there, but it's important to properly coordinate and to have the right governance in place. And for me, the last question, the last key point is about the seek for fairness, on how we are going to approach also the point of the developed countries, what we are going to demand from them, so, and how we are going to get the balance to try to make sure that they can contribute, but at the same time, this is not going to undermine their economic potential. So for me, it will be the three key things that if I have to highlight that I would like to hear, which are going to be the conclusions about them, so from the COP26. Yeah.
Maybe just add, I agree with everything you just said, José Luis, but I think that one of the most important factors is that all countries are ambitious enough in their own commitments in order to keep us on track for that under 2 and 1.5 degrees, if possible, temperature increase. It's incumbent on all parties, all of the Conference of the Parties members, to make those extremely ambitious commitments, and it's up to us to encourage them to do so. As I see we have a role to play in that. And apart from anything else, it's really important that COP26 takes place in an in-person format to allow that fairness, that representation from all countries in the world to be able to sit at the same table and have an equal say in the negotiations.
Perfect, thank you both. Okay, still got some more questions. Okay, so someone has asked, this one's to Hazel, but again, José Luis, if you have anything you'd like to say too, please do let us know. It said, you mentioned in your presentation, Hazel, someone's asked, you mentioned network infrastructure investment from network companies, but a challenge on network infrastructure is the development of the offshore interconnected network, given the large expected capacity from offshore wind. So someone's asked, what are your thoughts for driving the required investment, given the current OFTO framework? This is on the generator developer side at the moment.
Maybe worth mentioning that I spent quite a number of years representing Ofgem on the North Seas Countries Offshore Grid Initiative, which was started a long time ago. There was 10 countries around the North Seas originally quite some time ago now, got together to try to figure out how to develop an interconnected network of wind farms and interconnectors around the North Seas. And to be honest, it was just about the most difficult set of conversations I think I've ever been involved in, not least from the UK side, due to the regulatory arrangements we have on this side being so different from the arrangements on the other side, where it's system operator led on a lot of the countries that the UK connects to, which meant that our competitive OFTO approach was already a challenge in trying to measure that up. So what are my thoughts on that? It's maybe a bit controversial, but just speaking from personal experience, that in terms, if an interconnected grid with interconnectors and wind farms and everything flowing all over the place in the North Sea is ever going to work, there's a certain amount of ripping up the rule book is going to have to be required, ripping up the rule book and starting again with a bespoke arrangement for that kind of structure, because it's just so difficult. And to put the requirement to make anticipatory investments on the part of, as the question asked, the generator developer, to take into account the potential development of a competitor's generation and they're relying on the same connections to shore, for example, is just very, very difficult. So I think, yeah, rip it up and start again. So that's
Did you have anything you'd like to add to that, José Luis, or should we move on?
I would add that, for instance, thinking about our industry, so this is going to be quite important. So talking about Norway, talking about UK, but also the other countries that are sharing this North Sea. For some of the projects I mentioned before, in terms of how to electrify our sites, our platform, we are looking at different alternatives, and you realize that it's going to be a real challenge when you are looking at Norway, that because of the efficiencies, it's going to be for some sites to be more efficient. It finally just to get access to the grid to Norway, but this is going to imply a kind of interconnections through these other sites with UK at the same time. And you realize that there are more questions than answers. And this is going to be a real challenge for sure in the years to come. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Someone's asked a question about, they've seen an article in the Financial Times earlier this week about Rolls-Royce's ambitions to build nuclear mini modular reactors. And anyway, they just wondered if either of you had heard about that, and if you have any views on it, if so. I hope I've said that word modular correctly. I haven't ever read that before. So.
You want to try it, Hazel?
Well, I suppose it just, there's a role for all of us in this again. I mean, it's not something I'm familiar with, but clearly there's a role for nuclear, there's a role for low carbon generation as we move forward. So yeah, why not? Good luck, Rolls-Royce.
Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, another good question we've had is from Javier. He says, what are your perspectives to both of you about a solid implementation of green hydrogen in the UK? What are your thoughts about the competitiveness of this source in the UK in the future? Good question.
Okay, I can try it first, Hazel, if you don't mind. Yes, I think that probably UK, my view is that, you know, that at the end of the day, there are three different options. Hydrogen could be about gray, could be about blue, and could be about green. Green is the most challenging one, but at the same time is the most exciting one. It's basically just to produce hydrogen with an electrolysis project, which is going to be sourced by renewable business or renewable energy. So I think that the UK is going to have at least two key advantages. So the first one, I think that you need a market, and the UK, as far as I know, is going to be the country which is going to do the first step to try to start creating a kind of a hydrogen market or some kind of demand. There are a number of onshore clusters that are doing these first steps. We have good examples. And the second thing is that you need to have competitive access to renewable energy, specifically talking about the offshore. And I think that in terms of wind potential, there is no doubt that UK is going to be in one of the best positions. So yes, if we connect the access to the power and also the access to the market, I think that definitely for me, UK is going to be in one of the best positions.
Yeah, I can maybe just add that we have the technology now, and there's real potential in relation to green hydrogen in terms of cost reduction over the next decade. And we've already started some sort of trial projects again around our wind farm in Whiteley, just outside Glasgow, and a sort of green hydrogen for Glasgow project. And a similar one in the north of Scotland around the Cromarty Firth. We're looking at how green hydrogen can support the whisky distilleries, which, as we know, are quite energy intensive industries. So absolutely, green hydrogen of the future for those areas that we can't electrify using renewables directly. Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Another question we've had related to ScottishPower, Hazel, is can you explain a bit the current development of EV charging points and which is the role of ScottishPower in their territories?
So we have, well, ScottishPower has two different roles in that sense. In terms of I'll talk about the networks infrastructure first of all. So we have a role in ensuring that the electricity network has the capacity and is fit for electric vehicle charging points to be attached to in order to deliver the power. So there is a huge role for ScottishPower in making that investment, ScottishPower Energy Networks, in making that investment in order to make sure that electricity infrastructure is available. And then on the other side, another part of our business is ScottishPower Energy Retail. Has a business in terms of supplying the actual charge points to customers. So there's a kind of twofold role for us there. A commercial role and a networks infrastructure role. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but
that sounds great. Yeah, thank you. Okay, just a couple of final questions. I think we've had so many. Thank you very much for giving such comprehensive answers to all of them. We appreciate that a lot. So these are for both of you, if that's all right. Someone's asked, are there any risks in the decommissioning process of oil and gas platforms in the North Sea? What types of surveillance is being implemented by public authorities?
So yeah, in there, so we have a number of regulators. We have a number of stakeholders or public stakeholders that are doing the kind of surveillance. Just for you to give you an indication, I think that there is a specific body that we are having, I would say, a monthly contact in which basically we have to explain which are the commissioning plans, and not only talking about the platforms, but also talking about the wells. There are a number of standards, there are a number of guidelines, and I think that is a well-regulated industry where we have, I would say, the right oversight from the regulator to make sure that is going to be happening with the best possible standards. So, of course, this is an activity that is well oversighted by the regulator and the stakeholders here. Yeah.
I have nothing to add, sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, well, we'll just wrap up then with this last one. It says energy transition is going to have a clear impact on world geopolitics. Globally, there is a clear beneficial impact, but some countries will be paying a higher bill than others, in particular those economies heavily relying on hydrocarbons, and especially in developing countries, such as, for example, in Africa or Latin America. What can be done to prevent a crisis in these non-diversified economies, in your opinions?
I think that maybe I just start by making the point again about the inclusive nature of the COP discussions, that everybody has the equal right to be at those tables, and that as the sort of the countries responsible for the vast amounts of carbon emissions also have a role to play in supporting those countries who are suffering as a result of large amounts of carbon emissions. So it's really it sounds like a cheesy cliche, but we are all in this together, and it's our job to support other countries through the transition. We've done it ourselves, and as I said, it's not been easy. And if it's not easy for us, it's going to be even more difficult for those countries which have even stronger reliance on those technologies that they are currently sort of wedded to. So yeah, we have a responsibility, sort of, in that global geopolitical sense. Absolutely.
Fully agree with what you mentioned, Hazel. I think that is going to be one of the key discussions to be held at the COP26. I think that we need to follow a fair approach I think that after the announcement from the different countries on which is going to be the public money that is going to put on the table just to support this New Deal, this new Green Deal, so I think that there is room also that some of this investment can be placed at the right places. And this means that, in my view, that some of this investment needs to be deployed when we are having the key challenges. And sometimes this would imply some of these developed or undeveloped countries. The important point is just to be selective and to be pragmatic and to make sure that our approach is going to be fair, basically for those countries that are running behind. No, it's going to be quite essential. But again, being pragmatic, being selective, and be ready also to deploy direct investment to support the transition of these countries is going to be part of the debate for sure. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for both José Luis and Hazel for all of your answers to all of those questions. It's great that we received so many, and for the comprehensiveness of your presentations. That's a lot of really helpful content for a lot of people. So yeah, thank you very much from my side for your time today and sharing your insight with us. Ignacio, would you like to add anything?
Thank you very much, Hannah. This has been a fantastic first session on this issue. Both panelists have tackled technical issues, but they have made it with a very clear and accessible language. So we are particularly grateful to them for that effort, you know. And we have tackled lots of issues from, you know, the energy transition deal in the North Sea, the COP26, the Vision 2050, the right energy mix from the future, the possibilities of green hydrogen, lots of issues that would really need, each one of them would need a session like this one. So I think this should be a sort of aperitif for future sessions on renewable energies, because there is a lot and of interest, and legitimately so, on this challenge. Thank you very much, and back to you to close the session, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that I'll be sending around a follow-up, a feedback email after this, after the end of the session this afternoon, and I will include the recording of this webinar. So if any of you've joined us think a colleague or contact of yours this could be of interest to, please do feel free to share the resource with them. But yeah, thank you very much again from my side as well, José Luis and Hazel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.